Welcome back to another snorkeling adventure. We got a little bit of a trek to get to where we're snorkeling today, so I'm gonna go ahead, get the canoe off the car, and hit the water. So it's not super easy to do solo, but it is doable. Okay. This is my trolling motor setup. It's named Spring 1. Which is a play on Steve Irwin's Croc 1, which was his research vessel. But yeah, mounted a board into the canoe. This one attaches through some bolts with wing nuts on the underside, and then trolling motor sits here, battery sits there, and we're good to go. Finally off, just gotta use the paddle to get us going in the right direction upstream. All right, now we got some motion going. The canoe, battery, and trolling motor all came from Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace. If you're wondering why there's so much steam on the surface of the water, that's because the air temp is about 30 degrees Fahrenheit this morning, but the water is a constant 72 degrees Fahrenheit year round. This is a spring-fed river, and all the water is coming up from the Florida aquifer where it stays at constant temperature underground. That's also why it's a crystal clear river. I mean, look at that. Ew! That is awesome. Okay, I'm anchored to some structures along shore. I'm not on the bank so that I don't cause any erosion, but now it is time to suit up, and it's gonna be kind of precarious because I'm doing this in a canoe, as you can see, but yeah. The not so fun part. A little more kelp slime. Gotta sauce up the arms. The dark wet tunnel. If I don't fall in off the poop. I lost you guys there. Sorry about that. Man. Holy. Price of being toasty is high, but some price I'm willing to pay. Trying out a new mask and snorkel combo from Mako today. Shout out to Mako. It's like a mini one, so it's good for free diving because it's low volume. So gotta do something real quick, so I'm just gonna step into the room. Why are we snorkeling this crystal clear river today? Well, obviously because it's a beautiful spot and is worthy of snorkeling, but also because of this. Thank you guys so much for 100K subs. That's just crazy to me. I think I always hoped this was possible, but I didn't actually know if it was. And yeah, it's just so cool to be at this point and to be able to share these adventures with all you guys. So thanks so much for watching the videos and subscribing. But if you remember, my first video that really ever took off was actually a night dive at the same spot. So I figured it'd be a good throwback to do it during the daytime because these systems change night and day and they are beautiful whenever. Yeah, thank you guys so much. Let's get snorkeling. The water certainly looked clear from above the surface. Underneath, it was next level. I turned my camera around to a lush aquatic world bathed in morning light. An underwater meadow of eelgrass and strapleaf sagittaria stretched endlessly in front of me. When you stick your head in a body of water, that two-dimensional surface suddenly transforms into a fully fleshed out world of its own. It was kind of hard to know where to start exploring, and honestly, I was pretty content just being lost in this river of blue and green. Eventually, I made my way to the far side of the river. Lining the edge was a wall of what I believed to be maiden cane. It formed an interesting border to the meadow, and although it was basically impenetrable for me, I could see plenty of fish gliding effortlessly between the thin stalks. In contrast to the submerged eelgrass and Sagittaria, this is a type of emergent vegetation. The plants are rooted underwater along the shoreline, but the stems extend up through the water column, breaking through to the surface where the leaves and flowers then form. By now I had mostly gotten over the shock of dumping myself out of my canoe into this crazy, beautiful ecosystem. It was time to lock in and look for wildlife. First up, we have this mega chonker bass. It's hard to get the scale across, but he was almost 2 feet long, so I'd say that's pretty sizable. It's basically an incomplete snorkel without a chub or sucker of some kind, and thankfully we got a whole squad of lake chub suckers. These dark-colored individuals are breeding adults. The younger ones are more pale yellow in color with a visible dark stripe down their side, and I've come across them a few times in other videos. But it's nice to have the full chub sucker spectrum now. Can't forget the little guys either. Plenty of blades of grass had little snail ornaments, just flapping about in the underwater breeze. There were a handful of turtles around, but they were super wary of me and kept their distance. However, this cooter thought it could hide using its algae shell ghillie suit upgrade, but I spotted that striped noggin no problem. She wasn't keen on it and quickly scooted off to another part of the river, and I moved on too. I came to a place where the meadow thinned and sloped down to a bare sandy bottom and limestone riverbed. There are some unique aquatic plants in this open area as well. First, we have the native variable leaf water milfoil. It's kind of bizarre looking, almost like a shrub made up of hairy tails, each with a mind of its own. Next up, we have my personal favorite plant that is native to Florida Springs, red Ludwigia. Oh, real quick, I'd like to shout out the sunfish for their back-to-back cameos in these shots. They're really doing me a solid. But anyways, there's just something about that vibrant splash of red when everything else is various shades of blue and green that's just so good. The sunlight pulsing across the red leaves made it look like the little underwater plant was ablaze. A lot of springs in Florida are barren from overuse and water quality issues, so it's refreshing to see such dense and diverse submerged aquatic vegetation. But looking closely in a few areas, I could still see algae beginning to cover the grass blades, a subtle but very real warning sign of persisting water quality issues. Without prioritizing the health of our freshwater ecosystems, this vibrant world will fade. We can't take these habitats for granted. As I made my way back to the canoe, I was greeted by an absolute army of bluegill sunfish. I guess they were either interested in the canoe or maybe the particulate snacks I stirred up when I jumped in, but either way, it was time for me to head off downstream to another part of the river. Awesome aquatic meadow. Now we're gonna move on to the next spot where hopefully there's a little bit more wildlife. There's definitely tons of wildlife here. There's just so many places for them to hide, and it's so wide open that as soon as they see me coming, they're booking it. But we'll go downstream and get back in, keep going. Does the heart good to see that much vegetation in a Florida spring, let me tell you. Next spot, here we go. The downstream section of the river was different. As I looked out, instead of a shallow meadow, there was a steep drop-off into a sloping valley. In some areas, you could see the limestone of the riverbed peeking through, a reminder of the subterranean karst features that lay beneath. This river is primarily fed by a large headspring that pumps out almost 500 million gallons of water per day. However, there are other smaller springs along its course that also contribute to the flow, and limestone is a good sign they aren't too far away. First up was this mid-sized spring. There are also tiny boils, where water was pushing up through sand-filled gaps, forming little simmering pools of forbidden Alfredo. And lastly, there are larger springs, with a yawning mouth leading down into the watery underworld. I dove down to the entrance of this one, and normally I'd poke in to have a look around, but you know my rules. I'm flying solo, so no overhead environments today. Now, I had said we'd find more wildlife downstream, so let's get to business. I saw another largemouth bass. Nothing new here, but I thought its pattern and colors were pretty. And then a flash of orange caught my eye as a little fish zoomed away from me into the grass. I followed after him and came right up on the speedy golden shiner with his perfect little Dorito fins. I repeat, you cannot forget the little guys. Bluefin killifish darted in and out of the vegetation on the bottom of the river. Speaking of killifish, I noticed another fish that I have rarely seen, or at least I haven't paid much attention to before. Now, there's no such thing as a boring fish, but if I'm honest, there isn't a whole lot initially that makes these guys stand out, although they did look very much like little pool torpedoes soaring through the grasses. But these are Seminole killifish. They are a top minnow species, just like the tiny bluefin killifish, but these guys get much bigger, ranging from 4 to 6 inches. They were pretty flighty, so it took a while, but I finally managed to get kinda close to one. And then I came across a full-blown party-sized bag of Doritos, a big old school of golden shiners. Man, I love their fins so much. This area of the river featured a new type of habitat, the veg mat. Pieces of vegetation naturally collect in these large floating mats that often catch on snags as they drift down the river in the current. These shady overhangs provide important underwater habitat, which was very obvious as there were loads of fish hanging out beneath them. Bluegill and spotted sunfish drifted about beneath this mat as golden sunlight filtered through the floating debris. Honestly, these are some pretty sweet digs if you think about it. But not all veg mats are created equal. Some were quite large and so thick that it blocked almost all of the sunlight. I saw a gap that looked swimmable, and without any vegetation I'd disturb, I grabbed a breath and headed through. I emerged on the other side through a cloud of about 100 red-eyed chubs, back out into the current of the river. Maybe a little bit spooky for a human, but I can still confirm that's some solid aquatic habitat. I spotted another clump of red Ludwigia, so naturally I had to pause and admire it. The river was narrower in this section, so the current had picked up. It was pretty mesmerizing to drift along with the flow and watch the aquatic grasses billow down below me. This was yet another scenario where swimming underwater felt just like flying. And then, I saw a weird shape in the distance. It was getting closer quickly. While I'm down here thinking about flying, birds are swimming. This is a double-crested cormorant. He's also one of the best divers I have ever seen. He nimbly darted along the riverbed, turning on a dime as he hunted for small fish in the grasses. They have a serrated beak with a sharp curve at the end that helps them secure their slippery prey. I know this firsthand, as I got bit in grad school while hand-catching one that had been hit by a car. We took him to a wildlife rehabber, and I hope he made it out okay. But all that to say, big respect for these diving birds. They've got mad power. He circled around me a few times and then just jumped off the surface of the water and disappeared over my head. I popped my head above the surface and there he was, drying off on his perch until the next hunt. It's not every day you get to snorkel with a bird. And then I tried to sneak up on this pair of swamp chickens or gallinules, but since they live in swamps, being paranoid is their full-time job, so they sprinted off across the water. There was one last creature I wanted to see. I kept my eyes peeled as I came to a deep hole in the river, and then, in the distance, I spotted them. The long-nosed gar. I grabbed a breath and dove down. It was like swimming alongside a dozen floating swords. These gar spawn in early spring, and it seems that they are beginning to gather in preparation. The largest of these impressive fish was probably about 4 feet, but they can reach lengths of up to 6 feet. Swimming with these lengthy ancient fish was a pretty great way to end this day in the river. Headed back now. What I tell you about more wildlife down below. Thankfully, I was right. Appreciate the assist, Mr. Cormorant. Awesome. That is the same one I was underwater with. See you, buddy. Alrighty, we back. It's a good day. Good snorkel. Snorkeling there just always makes me happy. It's just so pretty. But anyways, thank you guys again for 100K subs. It's just so wild to me. I'm so grateful. And I'm excited to see where we go moving forward. So, but as always, thank you guys for watching, and I will see ya.